you helped produce the concert for Bangladesh, and I gotta say, the through line of you and Scorsese through the artists that you've worked for is that's coincidence, right? I mean, it's coincidence that you produce two Scorsese films, and Scorsese does the docs on Dylan and George Harrison, who
Right.
you work for. Like that
Right.
intersecting that's coincidence, right? But
Yeah.
brilliant coincidence.
Purely coincidence.
Just kismet that your guys' worlds weave
Yeah.
that way.
Well, we always liked the same music.
That's did you?
That's how I met Marty, because
Oh,
someone said to me, a mutual friend said, "You should go meet him. He edited Woodstock, and he's a rock and roll fan, and he loves the band, and he
oh,
loves the same music that you like."
that's right. Okay, we're gonna have to get to that. I remember reading that about the editing.
Yeah,
I, the with George Harrison, I want to get into that. I mean, obviously, that's I have to. This is a big
sure.
part of our program. How
Right.
did you first meet George Harrison?
So I first met him at the Isle of Wight. So when they arrived
With the
in
big
the
chopper
helicopter,
on the.
yeah, and then uh, after that was all over, he said, "Well, why don't you come hang out for a while at my house?" And so he had a hovercraft, a
Wait, what?
private hovercraft
What?
that somehow went from the Isle of Wight to some dock, and
Wait, John. What does that
then
mean? Like what you'd
there's
get
a
in the
thing that
Everglades?
went up and was,
What?
yeah. Well, they
Are you,
were all over. I mean, there wasn't any that modern technology. Hovercrafts were used in England a lot to go between the Isle of Wight and the mainland. It was an island, right? So you had to
sure.
go across the part of the channel. But anyway, he had a private hovercraft, which was kind of cool.
Naturally.
Uh, and then we went, and then this car met us, and he had the only Mercedes Benz I'd ever seen that had a V12 engine in it. It was like this top of the line, unbelievable car that could go so fast. And we went to Friar Park, and I hung out with him for 2 days. And so, he's the easiest person in the world to be with. I mean, he is, that little routine that you did at the beginning. He is very chill.
When we call one George, his recipe for, bringing the sun is sing the song
Right.
and then take some LSD. And when he takes the LSD, he multiplies into two Georges, and then the sun comes out. But the byproduct is we have a bonus George that just hangs out with us. Our two Georges is like the very, like peaceful version, very, like sort of, at one with everything sort of version. And so at the end of shows, the Georges sort of review what's happened, is sort of the thing. I get off camera and they come back and go, that was a pretty great show there. Yeah, that was a great show.
And you actually had his accent down pretty good.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
But he's very easy. I mean, he meditated for an hour every day. He closed the door, and nobody could do that. And
That was
so
you didn't meditate with him?
no, no, that's his own thing by himself.
John, I'm going to need a little bit of, I need my hour right now. You're going to have to keep yourself busy out there, with the
Yeah,
Matterhorn and so
yeah.
Frankie.
And then, and he ate vegan, and, he respected the tradition that Ravi Shankar had kind of taught him. And even the Maharishi had given him some training too. So he was seriously into it, much more than any of his compatriots.
Well, when you watch Living in a Material World, the documentary Scorsese did, I mean, spirituality was his quest. That's what he was always looking and searching, and was not afraid to take from different places. And sort of the way that I think John Lennon was not afraid to take different things musically, George was not afraid to take different things spiritually.
Absolutely.
If I may make
so then, then he would come to Woodstock regularly.
Where you live, just to clarify for the audience, right?
Yeah, I was living in Woodstock from '69 on, and he liked to play with the band. He'd like to play with Bob. He's very, just low key. He would come by himself. It wouldn't be a big entourage or anything. Sometimes he would bring Patty with him and sometimes not. And so then he would come up on weekends. And that's how, in the late spring, he told me about this idea to do this concert for Ravi Shankar, to do the concert for Bangladesh. And, it really sparked with me completely. It just seemed like a perfect thing, how to use Beatle power. That's what he used to call it, Beatle power.
Is that right?
Yeah. And so that's how it started.
And we spoke earlier about Bob Dylan being, as my assessment at least, the father of punk rock music. George Harrison, the father of the benefit concert. I mean, this is something also that had just not been done before, and it was quick, right? This wasn't a long planned out thing. Tell me about how you two collaborate as you're the producer of this concert.
I think it was April or May we first started talking about it, and in mid-May we booked 2 days at Madison Square Garden. One day to come in and set up all the equipment and put the stage up and the speakers up and do a rehearsal, and one day to have 2 concerts. So the only days that were available was August 1 to do the concert. That was a Sunday. And so we got the Saturday before the end of the last day of July. And then it was really a matter of George getting on the phone and putting a band together.
Right.
And everybody he talked to said yes. I mean, he went first to Ringo and then to Klaus Voormann, who was this bass guitar player that he'd known from Munich, and a German guy. And then he got Leon Russell and Billy Preston.
Wow.
And then added Jim Keltner as a second drummer, because he wanted that kind of 2-drum sound that Leon Russell had done with Joe Cocker. And then he called Bob, and Bob said yes, that he would do it. And then pretty much the whole thing came together very quickly. And then, of course, Eric Clapton was going to be the lead guitar player. And that ended up being a little bit of a soap opera.
Yes.
Eric was having a lot of drug problems at the time. He was snorting a lot of heroin. He wasn't shooting it, but he was snorting it. And so we had set up a rehearsal schedule for a week before the concert in New York. And the first day, everybody showed up except Eric. Mm-hmm. And then, so I called out to the Apple office in London, and I said, what happened? And they said, well, we went out to the house to pick him up, and his girlfriend came out and said he's too sick to travel. And so, but to come back the next day. So they did. They went back the next day, and the girlfriend came out and gave the same story, too sick to travel. So by the third day, George was really getting concerned, because he needed a lead guitar player. He was going to play the rhythm guitar. And so we kind of put the word out that we're looking for a guitar player. And pretty soon, everybody who could play guitar well showed up at the Park Lane Hotel in New York. And Peter Frampton and Jesse Ed Davis and all these other people. And George said, well, let's get Jesse, because he's kind of low key and he's easy to work with.
Is that the Taj Mahal?
Yeah, he had played for Taj Mahal. And so we did. And then I sent word to Apple to tell Eric that we didn't need him. And of course, that's when he said, well, I'm coming. And he managed to get himself together and get on the plane. come to New York, and then it was just a matter of trying to keep him together to get on stage, and that wasn't easy either.
I bet not. I mean, you wouldn't know it when you hear it, but that's how he operated. I mean, he could work magic with his fingers. You speak about, seeing these people in the throes of addiction throughout the book, and some of them, the few that did not make it out, and some that are surprising that they did, including Martin Scorsese and Eric. Just to, well, I'm sorry.
Keith Richards too. He made
Oh,
it.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. With this concert, it was tough to get Eric there. For Bob, you had mentioned that Bob was, and I think legend says was he nervous, or he just wasn't sure about this performance?
Yeah, Bob was always like leaving himself an exit strategy.
Okay.
He's not committing until the last second.
And was that the case for you? Were you also thinking, we might not have Eric and Bob?
Yeah, that was always a possibility.
Did Bob rehearse?
No.
Okay.
He came to the sound check the night before.
Okay, so that gives a little confidence. But when he's not rehearsing, maybe,
Well, here's the deal. Madison Square Garden, when it's empty,
yes,
is slightly intimidating. It's really big. I mean, Bob had been playing, 8,000 seat halls, maybe, the last time he had been on stage, maybe smaller than that. He hadn't been playing a 16,000 seat arena.
Well, and that's so interesting, because these legends, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, at the peak of their powers, are really not playing music live.
Well, I mean, the Beatles played stadiums in 66, 65,
Sure.
66.
But
by
after
this
that,
point, they hadn't been playing for 4 years.
yeah, I mean, you got basically half their records, these legendary records between Sgt. Pepper and the White Album and Abbey
Right.
Road, and we're not,
It had never been performed. Never been performed.
But for this concert, there were a few of them that, I mean, Here Comes the Sun, very first live performance, brilliant performance of Something.
Yep.
By George. So how did that feel being there, right? I mean, there's two concerts, and I've been in that situation before, where the first one is so stressful, but when you get a second one, everyone gets to loosen up. I'm sure that was the case for the musicians.
Totally the case. Everybody got much looser in the second one. Look, the first one came off very well. Everybody played well. I mean, Eric has told me he made a classic mistake in the first one. He was stoned, and the next song was As My Guitar Gently Weeps, and he just picked up the wrong guitar. He put on a big Gretsch hollow body guitar, which is like a thing that you would play jazz on, maybe, or do rhythm strumming, but it was not the right guitar to play the solo for As My Guitar Gently Weeps. But it was too late. The song had started, and he just decided to tough it out. And he played a brilliant solo. It sounds much different from the record because the sound of that guitar is much different. But he should have been playing his Telecaster, and he didn't. And so, but he was, there's this brilliant photo of him with the cigarette stuck in between the strings up on the neck, and he's playing this unbelievable solo on this big honking hollow body Gretsch. It's very funny.
Oh, I have to find that photograph. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so let me, you talk about the musicians loosening up. How did you feel at the 8 o'clock concert?
I felt by that time I was very relaxed. I knew it was working. The sound was fabulous. My crew from the band had done all the sound work, and everybody played really well, and there were some very fun moments. I mean, there was a Leon Russell did a version of Jumping Jack Flash that's just killer. And of course, all of George's material, it was really the first time he'd ever played it
Right.
on stage. And so for him, it was just incredibly gratifying. And then George and Bob did an acoustic set. It was really beautiful too.
That's so cool. Yeah, the Something performance, there's a real passion behind that, that you don't hear on the record, which is so
Right.
fun. Obviously, we love that with live music, that you get this different feel. That's what live music's all
Right.
about. It's so sweet and soft on the record, and it's almost, there's a pain in the live performance. And I'm sure, I mean, I don't want to project, I don't want to project here, but something perhaps to do with what was going on in his own life, with his relationships, which you speak of as Eric Clapton is there. And if people don't know about the Pattie Boyd and Eric Clapton and George, they need to read about it. We could go on forever and spill the tea on that one. That's an epic love story.
Needless to say, when I first came into George and Pattie's bedroom at Friar Park and saw the cover of Layla over their bed,
that's so weird.
I thought something was really strange.
That's so weird. When I saw that, and I on a random playlist yesterday, Layla came up, and it just popped back in my head of how weird that was. And you referenced the book, and I want everyone that's listening to you now on our program to know that the way you detail it here to us, you do and more in the book, The Magic Years, which they got to pick up May 4th. Heydaybooks.com is how they can pre-order.
You can pre-order it right now,
Pre-order. Right. Well, I like going to heydaybooks.com because the sweet people at Heyday Books, they connected the dots for us. A big shout out to our friend Julie over there at Heyday.